Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to our first episode of How to Speak Maintenance in 2025. It feels really good to get back into it and be able to talk to people about the industry and how we can speak maintenance with our teams, our on-site teams. So for those of you that are new, my name is Jason Fein, and I'm here with Becca Ramati from the Texas Apartment Association. Welcome, Becca.
Hi, Jason.
Becca's our rock star, the one that keeps this going and makes it happen. So I appreciate you being here, Becca. So
it just took us a few months to get back in it.
It definitely did. Well, today I'm excited. I've got a very special guest with us, Tony Sousa. Thank you for joining us today, Tony. I can't even begin to start to outline the amazing things that you're involved in and the adventures that you've been on. I'll admit I'm a follower. I'm a fan, so I've seen a lot of your content. So. Would you mind telling our listeners about yourself and what you're working on these days?
Yeah, Jason, thanks, man. That's real nice of you. Becca, good to see you as always. So there's a lot going on in my life, both personally and professionally. Excited to be here. Thanks for the invite. Of course, very happy to be here and excited to talk about how to talk about maintenance. Obviously, I'm not my background's not facilities or maintenance, but I think we're going to kind of come at it from a different angle, which I'm excited about as well. But so my life, I am a solopreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. I as of 2 weeks ago, I have my own consulting business, and so I'm excited, nervous, scared, exhilarated, all the emotions. So I'm really excited about it all. The warm welcome from the industry has been overwhelming in such a positive way. Just welcoming me, with my new consulting firm to the business. A few things about the business, I guess worth noting. I do brand strategy, operational consulting, and new development consulting, as well as ambassadorship, spokesmanship, and an array of different things, and ultimately, create content and a lot of other creative endeavors as well. I do tell, depends, and this may sound bad, but it depends on who's asking me. What do you do on a plane or anything else? I tell them I'm an old man content creator, and they just depends on who I tell. They either get it or they don't. Maybe generationally they get it a little bit easier, depending on who I'm talking to. But nonetheless, that's what I'm doing. So I'm excited, and again, very humbled to be on the show, and excited for the next adventure for my life.
Yeah, man, that sounds like a lot to chew on. So I know you're gonna. I'm sure you're gonna do well. Can you tell us a little bit about your role at RPM and what you were involved in there?
Yeah. So RPM, my experience, it was wonderful. I was there for 3 years. Just a couple of weeks ago, ended my time there, but still have great relationships with the team. It's an amazing company. But I started as the vice president of operations there in San Antonio, overseeing the San Antonio portfolio. About a year and a half in, I got a call for them. They said, "Hey, how about would you be interested in being our company spokesperson?" I didn't know what that was. I don't know if they knew what that was at the time. I don't know if the industry knew what that was at the time. Let's be honest. And so we just jumped right in, and they had a kind of a general outline and description of what they wanted it to be. And they thought, my skill sets could really help with that. I had a general idea of what I wanted that to be as well, and kind of leaned in and partnered with them very closely, and worked with an amazing team there at RPM. And so ultimately, I was I'd like to think sort of the chief brand ambassador of sorts, the company spokesperson. My official title was VP of Marketing Relations. So essentially, when somebody asks me, what does that even mean? I tell them I sort of humanize the brand. I brought the brand to life through human form, both in private conversations and team meetings and trainings and public speaking endeavors inside the company, but also online publicly, social media and other ways able to connect with a larger community outside of just in person. So again, representing the brand both in person, in small group fashion, and sometimes large group fashion, but also in a very public way, driving interest to the brand for potentially new clients to work with RPM as a third-party platform, as well as try to recruit and bring attention to what we're doing and try to recruit top talent across the country, coast to coast. So that in a nutshell is what I did. It definitely, there was never a dull day as this business, regardless of what you do in this business, there's never a dull day in multifamily.
That's true. It's very true. I think a lot of podcasts that I've been on as well, and the conversations in the industry, a lot of people are wondering, how do you retain and attract the best talent? And That's really interesting to be a brand ambassador and to be out there, making content and trying to attract it. What did you learn? Do you have any key insights or things that you learned along the way?
Yeah, well, I think you said two things there, like retain and attract, right? And I think oftentimes companies think that those are the same thing. They're actually very different things, and so we'll kind of break them out a little bit. Attract is a whole different science, right? You want and you have to kind of think about the psychology of who you're trying, where those folks are in their situation at their company, or maybe unemployed or looking for work. And so you have to really think from an attraction standpoint, kind of a marketing standpoint, like what's interesting to them? Well, why would they consider another opportunity, assuming that they're decently happy with what they're doing? And so, you come together with your recruiting team, your marketing team, and say, okay, like how do we publicly like get the word out about our culture, what we're doing? Why you should consider us as a new company to be a part of and grow your career. And so, so we would formulate messages internally, and then of course I, along with the corporate brand, would publicly post and comment and articulate ourselves why they should strongly consider opportunities for us. And so, yeah, so that's a whole science in and of itself, and trying to attract top talent. Ultimately, what I try to do is sort of live and breathe as much, sort of character qualities as possible, trying to embody the brand and mission, vision, and values, because I think top talent, they really look to those sorts of things, because, they can really kind of go anywhere they want. But at the end of the day, I also think that not only are they great at what they do, they're probably, top tier character people as well, integrity people. They work hard, and they also want to align with a company that embodies that as well. So from an attraction standpoint, those are just some of the little, I guess you could say, the secret sauces of attracting some of the top talent in the industry, regardless of facilities, corporate clientele, on-site management. I think there's some common threads there, and I think it has a lot to do with hard work, character, integrity, all those sorts of things. So we really try to hone in on those, and RPM has a lot of great mission, vision, and values, and so we try to sort of speak about those as frequently as we possibly could, and also live those out as much as we could. And then retention, that's a whole different animal, and sometimes even more challenging, I would argue, just based in a competitive atmosphere. Retention is about culture. Retention is about support. Retention is less about words and more about doing. And so although I had some impact there, I will tell you, operational leaders and direct supervisors have more of an impact on retention than somebody like me as a spokesperson. We did try to go out of our way to make sure we highlighted long-term employees and some of the reasons why they stayed long-term. So there's definitely sort of a marketing angle you could talk about there. But ultimately, in my opinion, people stay at any company for a long period of time, largely because, sure, they believe in the company and the mission, vision, and values. But ultimately, it comes down to, and I've always said this, local leadership, right? Their direct supervisor and who they worked with. And if they have a great experience with that person and have a great relationship and feel supported and paid fairly and have kind of this roadmap of opportunity, retention probability is very high. And so, I would talk about that. Our company did a great job on the HR side of just trying to really support our leaders to help make sure that they supported their team members as well, and try to increase the percentage of employees that stayed with the company. So two very different things, although they both start with R, recruiting and retention. But I think they're just different sciences behind both of those.
We talk a lot at the Education Foundation, TAAEF Education Foundation, about our focus is on recruiting, retention, and advancement. And the recruit and retain piece, like you said, Tony, two totally different animals, although sometimes they can affect each other. So what I saw from you posting things about, people who reached out to you for jobs because they saw what you were doing and they liked the culture or what you were presenting about the industry or about your company, that translated to the recruiting side as well. And I think that's an interesting piece that not everybody looks at, or not everybody really talks about as much as you were doing. Oops, we lost Tony.
Uh-oh.
Well, while I'm sure he's going to hop back on, Jason, my other question for Tony was about in the retention piece, and here he is. He's back. So Tony, any answers, anything to extra comment on that? component of sort of,
Yeah, I think
you know,
I think you make a really good point. Hopefully, can you guys hear me? Hopefully you can. Yeah, I think you make a really good point. I mean, as much as they're different, and we talked about, as I mentioned, kind of their different sciences, if you will, and different strategies, they actually go hand in hand to the point that I think you made very well. And I think they could actually really support one another on each side of the aisle. So I think you make a great point. And I think sometimes that's purposeful in the messaging, and sometimes I think that's, frankly, by good old fashioned luck, that they both complement each other sometimes.
Definitely. I really like how you differentiated yourself and your role, and you said it comes down to the on-site individual leaders, the regional managers, the community managers that are in the field that have a bigger impact on the maintenance teams and the leasing teams as well. I'd love to hear, what your perspective is on recognition programs for maintenance employees. I think that's a big portion of our listening audience is people that are maybe in that middle regional manager level, and they're trying to figure out a way to connect with their maintenance teams.
Yeah, I mean, this question I get asked a lot, as far as, like, how do we connect with this segment, right? Maintenance or anybody else, and in my mind, and it's really about like getting to know your team, right? Like it's about getting to know them individually and then collectively. And I think at RPM, for example, they did a great job of really trying to listen to what their maintenance teams were provided with, the feedback that they were providing in regards to like what we wanted and what we liked and what we thought was fun and what we didn't find that was very fun. And so so we did a good job there, but ultimately like it's a team, right? So not one work group is better than another. Not even one work group is more technologically advanced than the other. To be honest, they just do very different jobs, and frankly, they're all incredibly vital to the success of the operation. Right? I used to tell our teams, to look at things as like as a machine, right? And you need all the pieces and components to be operating at a high level and complementary to one another. And so, but you also have to understand what this side, of the machine is doing. They should have some understanding of what you're doing as well. And I think oftentimes because our business can be very siloed, and even on site can be very siloed as well. I just do this. I'm just maintenance. I just do this, or I'm leasing, and some of the best experiences that I had on site as I worked my way up and through was, having my leasing teams and maintenance teams spend time in the field, doing some basic work orders and doing some basic cleans and things of this sort. They got a really quick sense of like, wow, this doesn't like poof happen. Like it actually takes energy and effort to get some of these things done. And so it makes them rethink before they put in a work order that just is incredibly vague or with no details. It makes them stop and think like, okay, well, like if I was doing this, because I just did that last week and my manager made me go out and learn how to do this, maybe I should provide like, or maybe first and foremost, I should try to get as much detail as I can on the phone or through the portal. Once I do that, then I could better help my team in the field troubleshoot or solve a problem, because ultimately that resident will be happier, which will serve resident reviews better. Will make the maintenance technician feel more accomplished because he solved the problem, and then we feel good about it too because they're happy next time they call, or at least they feel more satisfied. So that's just one example of just like a work order, right? Like there's so many other sort of cycle examples that we could probably talk about, but that's I think a pretty common one that happens every single day. That sometimes is because we're moving so fast, we overlook all those moving pieces, and frankly don't always think about the other guy or the other part of our business in the highest and best way. And you try to live by the principle of love your neighbor as yourself. And I would argue that it's like take care of your adjacent work group just as you would take care of your own work group in a very similar way.
Definitely. I think it connect as people first. I mean, we're all there for a function, right? I'm the maintenance employee, you're the leasing consultant. If we connect it, maybe it's in the morning. I've seen teams where that's part of their morning huddle, and for an hour they just sit down and they talk. I think there's got to be a book out there about teams that break bread together and connect, over a meal are more likely to stay together. And that definitely helps to form those bonds.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Becca.
okay, if you know your team, you're going to know how they want to be recognized, and
Right.
it's not. It doesn't feel good if you're recognized in a way that makes you uncomfortable. So,
Yeah.
understanding what the best way to recognize a team member is really important, and you only can know that by asking and getting to know them.
I agree. I use this example all the time, the example that you're saying, but I bring it even closer home, for me and like my wife, right? Like if I don't know what she likes for her birthday or her favorite treat or, uh, I'm going to be in trouble. So I need to make, and maybe vice versa, but, I could just speak for myself, but, it's the same for your team. Like know what motivates them. And sometimes it's not always money and sometimes it's not always this. There's intrinsic motivators. There's other things, and sometimes it's just a good job publicly or maybe privately. Some people like public praise, some people like private praise, right? I found definitely that private appreciation is always appreciated, and again the public sometimes there's certain personalities that appreciate that more than others. But just get to know your work group just like you would get to know your friends or your spouses or anything else. It doesn't feel too overly complicated to me, but sometimes I think in the thick of it and when we get so busy, we sometimes maybe forget how important those things are.
Definitely. I think we kind of hit on a little bit the divide between the maintenance and the office teams, and how it can really kind of put a divide and really separate the two. And one will feel like they're more important than the other, or feel less important. So what have you seen in your time in the industry, and how have you
Yeah.
seen teams break past that? Because I'm sure in your long tenure and all your adventures you've been on, you've seen teams grow together and learn
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think
manage.
I think Becca made a good point just a little while ago. I mean, I think it stems from local leadership, right? I think it stems from the manager themselves or the regional manager, just sort of setting the tone. And Jason, I think you mentioned this too, like breaking bread, right? Like setting the tone of like we are a team, one for all and all for one, right? Is that we're all here to serve a greater good, to take care of our residents at the end of the day and our clients, and take care of this asset as well. And so I think creating environments in which you can get to know your team members, also find ways to support them. And when you face adversity, I think those local leaders, those property managers, those regional managers, sometimes assistant managers, assistant manager technicians as well, right? Like if they handle adversity and challenge with great patience and ultimately with giving their team members a benefit of the doubt that they were well intended and had good intentions, maybe we didn't execute at the highest level and maybe we made some mistakes, but let's learn from them. Let's try not to repeat those mistakes. And I think if you have that leader on your team that sort of operates in that way, I think it could really create an incredible environment to where people don't want to even leave. We talked about retention. Like that is an environment that, emotionally makes someone feel really good to come to work every day and feel, as though they're being accomplished and they're a part of something bigger and they're a part of a team that really cares. So when we talk about retention, that's just another element as well, that if you create those environments for folks, listen, like, and sometimes unfortunately it's hard to find that elsewhere, and so if you create really that great environment, they're not going to drop keys on you and go anywhere because they're in a really good situation, and hopefully you're paying them fairly as well. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Becca, earlier you said you're talking about retention, you're talking about trying to recruit the best talent, but then you also talked about advancement, and I think that's a big portion of it. I mean, we can be buddies and we can all like working together for a year, but I think after some period of time, something has to kind of come to fruition as far as what's my next step, what's my growth potential. So, how do you, Tony, how do you get past that? How do you make time for training or growing your people so that way they feel like they're being built into their future, potential?
well, I've said it before. I mean, I think there's three components. I think you need to provide support. You need to provide some freedom and flexibility in what I call autonomy. And then I think you need to provide essentially a roadmap for growth. Most associates, from my experience, have wanted growth of some sort. Now, not everybody wants growth, and that's fine. But I would just say, expect it of your employees, that they do want, monetary growth, professional growth. And I think your question is like, how do you prioritize that? And in my opinion, like if you're looking at those three things, you find ways to pour into those three things. How do you find ways to support them? How do you find ways to also allow them to have some autonomy and learn lessons on their own, right? And then come back and let's talk about those. And then lastly, like how do you find the time to sit down to create, career roadmaps for them to say, if you accomplish these goals here, right, and we meet these goals here, this is going to lead to this step, which could then lead to this step, which then can lead to this step. Now, the tricky part to it, where I think a lot of leaders sort of miss, the growth opportunity or help bolster growth for their team is in the execution of the steps, right, of the actual growth. Because what I hear a lot is, okay, well, I'm doing all these things and I'm going nowhere, right, and nothing's happening, right? So being able to come back and check in with your team and say, okay, this is where you are on the map, right? This is where you are on this Candyland, board game, right? Like you're advancing, even though it feels like maybe you're not, but this is where you are in my eyes. And being able to be that transparent with them so that they could say, oh, I didn't realize I'm so many steps ahead than I thought I was. And it's cool to get your perspective as a manager to say, I'm farther than I thought I was. I'm encouraged, right? And then when there is that opportunity to grow financially, or let's say transfer to a sister property in a new role, please, I'll tell every leader that's listening, please don't stop your team members from growth. They're going to leave anyway if you do. Okay. And I think this is also an issue sometimes with asset managers and leaders. Like, no, we're going to try to keep them because we don't want to lose them. Listen, like your job is to grow people and let them go where they want to go. And if you do, if they end up staying with you, great. But please do not hold them back in any way. Unfortunately, this is something I've heard in this industry for a very long time. Like, let's pretend they're not doing as well as they are, so they stay with us. No, that is not a good strategy, right? And I get it. Like, you want to keep the best team, but your job is to let them grow, move on. And if they stay there, great for 10 years, awesome. But if they move on and get promoted, be happy for them. Your job is to then cultivate the next leaders, right? I know it's hard and it takes work, but listen, that's why you have a job and that's why you get paid. Okay. So invite that process. Don't be afraid of that. Don't try to throw a wet blanket on folks that are growing in their career. And frankly, I've had both experiences for myself. I've had what felt wet blankets thrown on me left and right. And I've also had incredible supervisors around me that are like, dude, we want you to shine and we want you to fly. And so I've had that own personal experience. I would just challenge any leader that's listening today that if they have a tendency to try to hide their folks or wet blanket them, to really take a step back and think, like, is that best for them or best for you? And your job as a leader is to create a culture, an environment, and a roadmap that's best for them, not best for you.
I love that. I think it can become overwhelming with the amount of tasks that they have on a daily basis, between tickets, turns, common area stuff, making sure that all the PM work is done, making time for training or sitting down and talking about future growth. That's so important. And I mean, before our call, you and I were chit chatting, and we got kids, and we're talking about how they're growing so fast, and weeks just fly by. So without sitting down and saying, hey, you and I are going to sit down once a month. Let's identify a time after lunch. How about this? You go to lunch on Fridays once a month, and after lunch, you and I are going to sit down. And we're going to break bread a little bit.
And the reality is, I used to hear teams like, Tony, I don't have time for that, right? Like, the reality is you're going to have to make time, because what that does is I'm expecting you to make time for it. But secondly, what it does is tells them that you're making time for them, right? And even if you don't solve the world's problems in that meeting, you carving out 30, 45, maybe an hour post lunch means the world to them, right? And so when we talk about support, that's part of that support, right? Like we talked about those three components, the support, autonomy, and career road mapping. That's the support part, and also kind of plays into the roadmap. But, it also tells that employee that you're prioritizing their goals over your to-do list, right? And that means a lot to them. Listen, ain't nobody got time. And I used to tell my teams, listen, just don't use the B word, not the one that you think of, the busy word, right? Like we're all busy. Like, don't say you're too busy to do this, because we're all busy. We just prioritize what's important. So,
well, here's another a B word from a question that we got: billable.
Billable.
So,
Yeah.
question from Steve. So, he said he would love his teams to spend time together and bond and break bread, more B words. But when your team is tied to a billable hour, how do you counteract this and sort of sell this, which you started to talk about, Tony, but how do you sell this to your bosses?
Well, I think team camaraderie and building bonds with your team is valuable and ultimately should be billable. So you're going to get better value out of their actual work if you are building into the workload or however it's designated, by the terms of the contract, that there's going to be opportunities for us to break bread, and we're going to pay you for that because we know that that's beneficial for us and it's something you probably enjoy as well. So for me, it's very clear that this shouldn't, we're not working with robots, right? Like we have to remember, like these are human beings that need, professional support, but also emotional support at times. And we need to make sure that we build that into the billables because it is valuable. And I think that's just kind of a shift in culture for our industry a little bit to recognize how valuable those moments are. So hopefully it answers some of the question from my perspective.
Yeah, Stephen, that's a really great question. The teams that I've seen that have grown and they've stayed together, it's not just during working hours. It's they want to spend time during lunch together. I remember, quick story. I was at a property and it's my first time, and I'm walking around and it's about 11:30, and all of a sudden I heard somebody on the radio get on and just say this rambling sentence, and I couldn't even tell what it was. And I asked the supervisor. I said, "What is that?" And he said, "Well, that's Tom. That's our maintenance tech. He's been here for 15 years. What he does at 11:30, he says that's our call to lunch." And that just knows that we all know we got to start making our way to the shop. We're going to sit down and we're going to be able to eat some lunch together and talk about our personal lives and get to know each other a little bit more. And they were doing it for 15 to 20 years together, and they didn't want to leave. So it's not just about the billable hours and the times that you're spending during working hours, but it's also after hours too, that,
Great point.
can really help. You want to spend time with them. So
yeah, or you should want to, at least to some extent. You don't have to be friends, but
yeah, definitely. Yep. Any other questions? That was a great one.
That's it for right now. But I think that was great. That hit on some really key things.
Yep.
Hiring maintenance is just different.
Yeah.
And can be more difficult and is a struggle for this industry, continues to be. And so I think these are some helpful things to keep in mind. And I really liked what you said about it all goes back to the local leadership and, getting to know your people. And that helps with all parts of retention and keeping people, or knowing when it's ready for them to, right for them to go as well. So
Yeah, and I'll add something to the recruiting side. And Jason, I think you'll appreciate this. Is I think recruiting managers, regional managers, property managers that are recruiting for maintenance need to get with your maintenance supervisors, maybe your regional facilities directors, and ask them, like, what's important, like what incentives should we add in this job description or in this interview conversation that we want to talk about or highlight, because I think it's very different for the office side. And I'll use a few examples. I think pay is a very direct question on the maintenance side. They want to know competitive rates. And let's talk about what nobody wants to talk about. Let's talk about the on-call piece, right? That's a big part of the conversation that you need to be ready and willing to address in honesty and transparency. And those are a couple. I'm sure, Jason, you could rattle off a whole bunch more, but I mean, those are just a few examples that I think speak to the hearts and minds of those on the facilities side when you are both recruiting, from a marketing standpoint, but also when you have them in front of you to be able to sit down and be honest with them and very transparent with them, and just let them know if they're signing up for it. And at the end of the day, I say this often: hardworking people aren't afraid of hard work. Right, but they they don't want to join a toxic culture. They don't want to be bamboozled. They don't want the wool pulled over their eyes. They're not afraid of hard work. If you say, "Listen, this job is going to be very difficult, but we're going to pay you fairly, and we're going to be honest and transparent, and we're going to give you opportunities to grow, and maybe potentially like learn new skill sets that you've never learned before." To be honest, like, that's a hard turn down, especially if you're ready to go from where you're at. And oftentimes they are. But if they feel as though you're trying to sell them sunshine and puppy dogs, they get a sense that you're not being straightforward with them, because they know the job is hard in and of itself. Not that the management job is hard, but it's a very different job.
Well, I'm very intrigued to see where you go in your next adventure and your new company that you're starting up. It's to bring awareness to the industry, and to be able to bring people in and want to be a part of property management is a big part of how we bring people in. Is because I'll be honest, I've talked to many maintenance employees in the past that this is something that they didn't get out of high school and say, oh, I want to be a maintenance employee. I want to be on call and get paid during Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, my spouse loves that, by the way, right?
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. So it's, and I've got children that are, they're adults now. And I've been telling them about the maintenance industry and about leasing and trying to get them into the field. So good luck to you in your next adventure. And I'm proud that we were able to get you on and talk to our audience about what you're working on. So before we go,
I think,
go ahead.
Well, the only thing, the thing I just want to add to that, and thank you for, thank you for having me. But I think now is the time, really, in 2025 and going forward. And I know for me, I think we need to talk about the things that need to be talked about, right, in a very direct and forward way, a productive and constructive way. We don't have to be jerks about it, right? We don't have to be mean-spirited. But I do think that we need to start addressing some of these 800-pound gorillas that our industry faces, and at all levels. And it doesn't mean, hey, on site and management, you guys have to have these hard conversations. In my opinion, at the very highest levels from asset management, need to be having these discussions with management and on the ground associates as well. And so I'm excited to be on different platforms to be able to have these hard conversations and to say the things that maybe need to be said. Obviously, I have a little bit more autonomy because, I have my own company, and so if I'm in trouble with myself, and I understand the dynamics elsewhere. But I just think it's important, these conversations and many others, that we really start shooting straight a little bit more and start talking about the real challenges that we face, because I think it'll lead to real solutions.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I always like to ask a question at the end of our podcast, so of our meeting. So if you could pinpoint one thing that makes you want to come to work every morning, what would that be?
For me, it's a little different now, right? Building your own business I probably could end up, working 14 to 16 hours a day, because I'm just so excited about what I'm trying to build and how I'm trying to help my clients, and some of the messages that I'm trying to bring to the industry unabashedly in a way that I just articulated. So that's what wakes me up every day. But I'll tell you, just even in a conventional environment, I think, and my experience has been just the people I worked with, the goals that we're trying to work together to achieve. I think that's a collective goal that I think many people really wake up every morning, and especially if you're in a good team environment, you respect and appreciate the team members around you. I think that's a good perspective to have. And obviously, if you don't have that, reach out to somebody and try to find a situation to make your situation a little bit better.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Tony. And for all the listeners out. Oh yeah, we're going to have to get you on another one soon. So, go ahead, Becca.
We'll see everyone next month, where we'll be back with another episode of How to Speak Maintenance. If there's a topic you'd like to see us talk about, please let us know. Add it to the chat, and we'll see you next month. Thanks.